got a special guy.
We
got a special guy. Hey, we're welcoming our guest. This interview as well is brought to you by BetUS. Let me remove this comment. It's brought to you by BetUS. The legendary fellas. The main man of Detroit Lions NSI. Go check it out, dude. I was reading it earlier this morning. Unbelievable articles. But the legend, John the Doc Maakaron. Doc.
The Doc.
Welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Man, it's a great Wednesday. Jeff's in Vegas. You think he's stopping by one of those special places or ordering them up two at a time? Or is he going to go chill out?
Order them up two at a time. Okay, Doc, I think he's going to have a great time out there. Great time. I'm sure Jeff's missing you right now, Doc. I know he's disappointed he couldn't be on the show, but he'll be having a good time. No doubt.
Yeah. Hey, Doc, let's start off with this real quick because I saw your tweet about it and I saw your article. I actually read your article about it. The NFL cap going up. Very interesting situation going on. Obviously, we knew it was going to go up, and it's going to go up next year, but you're tied to it that I keep seeing you put out there, and I brought it up to start the show, Myles Garrett. Now you have money and extra money that you're able to say, hey, we don't have to really worry as much about these contracts. Can you break that down for the fellas and for the people, the whole, the salary cap moving up, and then what that means for the Detroit Lions here going into next season?
Yeah, absolutely. It's good news. First and foremost, my goodness, that in the past couple years, the cap is going to be up over like $55 million. It's spectacular. It gives a little bit more flexibility to Brad Holmes and a lot of teams. I know the commenters said that, look, every team now has the opportunity to sign their own free agents. But here's the thing. You look at the Saints, Kellen Moore's got a tough situation. They're already starting $50 million over the cap, so they got work to do. But the Detroit Lions are in a good position. They're sitting right now, I think, 10th in the league with how much salary cap space they have available, $45 million. It was run really well by Brad Holmes in the front office, John Dykema as well. Part of that staff he went to now Michigan State. We'll probably talk about that a little bit later. But you look at the situation, and it's just more money for these teams. And I think it's basically, when you look at how much more it is, it's one of those deals where people expect the official number, I think, is going to come out next week. It's going to fall somewhere between $277 million and $281.5 million available for teams. And last year was set, I think, at $255 million or so. So when you look at it, the cap is going up and up and up. And I know people will say the cap's not real and stuff like that, but no, it's real. You want to be able to manage your cap so that you can pay your rookies, you can pay the players that contribute, and you got some big decisions to make. And two of those decisions that are going to be interesting to pay attention to are Aiden Hutchinson and Jameson Williams. I think one of those two is going to get a big contract extension, and I probably believe it's going to be Aiden, which is probably going to be at $40 million or more per season. But the great thing about the cap is that the first year, you kind of notice that they spread it out over several years, and there's void years that the Lions like to use. So basically the first couple years, you don't get the big impact. Like Amon-Ra St. Brown's $30 million didn't hit until now. It's going to start picking up here this year and next year. So look, with the salary cap, more is better. And the whole purpose of more is not to worry about Myles Garrett and Aiden Hutchinson getting big-time contracts. And I know that that's the big question mark is, would Brad Holmes pay two edge rushers north of $75-80 million to play? Well, if you're in the pursuit of a championship by any means necessary, and here's the difficult part, though, that is now interesting. I listened earlier. Aiden Hutchinson is making it more difficult on Brad Holmes. He's out there, and St. Brown is out there on their podcast saying, hey, I'm going to text Brad to get Myles Garrett. And you got Aiden Hutchinson going on the podcast saying we'd be dangerous. Well, here's what happens. Everybody already is excited about the potential about adding the stud of the that's available potentially. But can we handle another Bregman situation where all we talk about is Myles Garrett, and all the Tigers fans talked about was Bregman, and you don't get him? I was left disappointed not getting Bregman. I know people will say, oh, the Tigers offered the big money. Well, when you build your whole offseason around a guy that's a right-handed bat that knows your manager and you end up falling flat, it's not a good sign. And so for the Detroit Lions, you have to answer that question this offseason. The biggest question that everybody's talking about. You see the national media, the local media, everybody wants to know who is going to play opposite of Aiden. And you got to answer it. And hopefully with more available funds, if you don't get Myles Garrett, then that opens the door maybe to make an offer for Hendrickson or for Max Crosby if you need to make another blockbuster trade. But I'm just hoping that, and that's what I talked about really tomorrow on the Doc and Jock podcast, which is the general managers are great in town about drafting and developing. Free agency, getting there in regards to maybe needing a little bit more aggression in getting some established stars around town.
Hey, what's going on there? Just watching some Crunch Time Sports. But let me tell you about the sponsor of this episode, and that is BetUS. You can head over to BetUS right now and place a bet on a player for the Detroit Pistons to win Sixth Man of the Year. I love Malik Beasley. If you check his odds right now on BetUS, he comes in at plus 450. The favorite is Peyton Pritchard. But why not? At those odds, for how well he's been playing, he is the guy. Has one of the most made threes in the NBA right now. So I'm going to go ahead and lock this in, and you can place your bets as well. It doesn't have to be this one, but you can go find the bet for you and head over to BetUS right now. And don't forget, they are offering our community 150% on the first 3 deposits. All you got to do is use the code YouTube150. Now, let's get back to the video.
Doc, I want to ask you because it was very ironic that I read the article this morning, so shout out to you. But I brought up a player yesterday. Every Tuesday we do a segment. Now here's a guy, and it's either a draft prospect or a free agent signing that I would like to happen in Detroit. And this week I did Mekhi Becton, and I saw that you wrote an article on him this morning. So when you look at Mekhi Becton, what's your opinion on the whole situation, and what do you think the likelihood is that he leaves Philly and then chooses to come to Detroit?
Yeah, well, for all free agents, it's all about the dollars and cents. And it's going to be very interesting to see how much dollars and which position the Lions go in. Earlier today, reported on the fact that Adam Schefter went on a local Philly station and said that, look, Mekhi Becton was in a great situation. He was, started off as a tackle, and his years with the Jets fell short of the expectations. Comes to Philadelphia, works with Kellen Moore and a solid offensive line coach, and he becomes their right guard. And he's part of the formula why Saquon Barkley has a spectacular season. So he's up there ranked in the top 75 free agents that's available up there. But I think the expectation is across the league is that he loves the situation with the Eagles. They're in a good spot. They have a great running back that's always going to make you look good. The offensive line together was special. And so it's going to take a special offer. And I don't think that when you have Christian Mahogany, that's basically the guy replacing Kevin Zeitler if he doesn't come back. I just think it's tough to, we wrote about on Lions NSI, Trey Smith as well from the Chiefs. He's up there too, coveted. But many people were pushing back on me saying, hey, did you not see him fall on his ass and get his ass taken care of by the Eagles defensive line? I was like, whoa, there's a little bit of caution there that the Chiefs were one-dimensional because they couldn't run the football. So that's why that whole offensive line looked terrible. Trey Smith, when you watch film all year long, was pretty solid. Didn't give up a whole heck of a lot of sacks. And he'd be a great addition too. But here's the thing. I don't know yet. We'll talk to Brad Holmes next Tuesday at the Combine, and we'll find out, kind of get more of a sense of just how aggressive they're going to be in free agency. Right now, going into it, you only go by history. I just don't feel like blockbusters are in the mix, but there's more money to be had. And, Brad Holmes has publicly always said sustained success. Well, I think I heard Booner and you guys as well. I do think that fans want more aggression, like make a push a little bit more serious with proven stars. I think the odds are low Mekhi Becton comes to the Lions, but man, if he does, you got yourself a guard that can man that offensive line for a lot of seasons. He's a good player. But
only 25 too, Doc.
The Lions and also too, this draft features a lot of linemen too that can do the job too. So I just don't think that, the way Brad Holmes has always talked about it, it's just like a special deal to take time to allocate to research other players outside the organization. They much prefer their own draft and develop model, and we'll see how it plays out. But I would not mind being a more aggressive on the offensive line too.
Klotz, you want to follow up?
Kind of just because we're talking about the offensive line already. When you look at the left side of this offensive line, Graham Glasgow, I think at the end of the day, you're paying for what you get. And I think Graham Glasgow, you see, kind of returned down to earth this year. But somebody that's been concerning for me for, I think, the last 2 seasons, not that he's been terrible, but you can see he's on the decline, is Taylor Decker. What do you think their plan is to replace Taylor Decker? Do you think they go in the draft this year? Because when you look at it, he gave up 8 sacks last year, 8 sacks this year. Thing is, he missed 3 games this year. He's usually a guy that stays pretty healthy. And now that you see plays dropping, that last stretch of the season, I thought he really struggled. What's your outlook on Taylor Decker, and what do you think they're going to plan to do to replace him?
Spot on. I think that, the start of the year was, a situation in which you realize, okay, it was not terribly, it's one of those situations in which Taylor Decker is a veteran. He's one of those guys that Jared Goff trusts and is a staple of that offensive line. And Dan Campbell called him and Frank Ragnow and Graham Glasgow, originals and stuff like that. And they have a lot of fondness, but his play throughout the year, up and down, the whole offensive line collectively, up and down, inconsistent, and especially against the Commanders, against the Bills too, they got work. Ragnow had his worst game of the year against the Bills. So the biggest question mark that people are going to wonder about is, do you take your all-pro right tackle in Penei Sewell and just move him to the left side? That's a position he played at college. You could shore that up, and that's pretty much set. Most people believe coming into the league that would be the plan. I'm not so certain because of how great and dominant Sewell is on the right side, but I think that solves the problem pretty quickly as you move Sewell to the left side and you try and potentially sign a right tackle in free agency or in the draft. But I do think there's a potential with the deep class that's available now, that's out there, especially from the Big Ten, SEC. You realize there's a lot of talented offensive linemen. They could draft one in waiting. I don't know if there's one waiting on the roster right now, but I do think in the next couple of years, and maybe even this year, that position will be addressed. You're absolutely right. The play you're starting to notice it, and it's a factor, especially when Jared Goff needs time to have success. So I do think they will address it in the draft. I would presume, based on how the Lions operate, that the first place they'll look to is the draft.
And you don't think what do you have to say about this? Like, they just paid Decker, I believe it was $3 or $30 million. I could be wrong on the number there.
I think the 3 years is right though.
Yeah,
what do you any impact there?
Look, I do think that these decisions that are made are tough. I think he'll be on the roster, but I do think that you got to look to what's next. I think that they value his leadership. I think he'll have a spot on the roster this year, and with each year the cap number goes down and the dead cap goes down. But it's one of those situations where you're absolutely right. Looking ahead, something needs to be addressed in the future, and it might be Penei Sewell, or it might be a young player that they bring along to develop.
Hey, Doc, I want to ask you too, because since we talked last week, just actually like 2 days ago, the interview with Dan Miller and John Morton came out, and we played it on the show, a couple parts of it. I thought it was pretty interesting. Obviously, him talking about how he helped build the current offense from 2022. And then just also how he, like, going into this year, he doesn't really want to change much with the Jared Goff offense. What was your takeaways from that interview? Did you kind of take it as a positive? Because we had the conversation. Klotz was still a little skeptical, just being like, hey, we want to see it this year. And I was more so on the side to where, hey, I love the fact that he came out and said, one, he's going to be calling plays, but two, he doesn't want to change this Jared Goff offense. Like, he wants to keep it the exact same, and maybe make some adjustments for the better, for pieces on that offense that weren't as good. What were your takeaways from that?
Yeah, it's one of those situations where having that interview juxtaposed with Kelvin Shepherd was a little different. Calvin's a little more comfortable being with Dan Miller, being around the organization. He just came off spitting fire. Like, I'm expecting the defense to play well, to fire along. And unfortunately, I was because that's how I played it. I played Kelvin Shepherd's first, and then I went to John Morton's.
Yep.
Morton's was a little bit more standard per se, not all that inspiring. It's more like, hey, I luckily he answered the question about he's going to be tasked with the play calls. I would find that to be not terribly surprising, but I just thought that the answers that he gave, just from a first look optic standpoint, a little bit mild in regards to the way in which he delivered it. It was, the most interesting part was I thought that he gave a solid answer for why things flopped with the Jets. He said, look, I just had to have the coaches there, and you don't really have the benefit of hiring your own staff. And so you kind of just got to handle how it goes. But there are some things he's got to answer for too, because he ended up, in one game in particular that set the New York media on fire was, I think it was like 3rd down and short situation. And he called 3 pass plays, and the Jets fan base and the media just got on him. And it ended up causing a little bit of a rift with the coach, I believe in Todd Bowles, and eventually he was dismissed. So you look at it and you say, okay, first impression media-wise, maybe not as comfortable. Maybe we'll get a sense of how he is in a different setting than it was on his first. Because remember, too, he has not talked to the media a whole heck of a lot publicly. So you're out there and you're with the guy, Dan Miller. You're on television. So it's a little bit jarring. So I would expect him to get more comfortable. But outside of his early presence on camera, I do think he's a wealth of knowledge offensively. And I think that the benefit of him working with Dan Campbell, working with Hank Fraley, working with Tashard Choice and David Shaw, I do think that the Shaw hire was a John Morton situation as well. Hey, knowing a guy that you're familiar with and having guys on your staff that you trust that are going to support what you do makes things a lot easier in terms of play calling. And for John Morton, it's going to come down to this. You are given a Ferrari, and you got to make sure that engine stays purring, because if it doesn't, it's your fault, because the talent is there. And we saw with the talent of Ben Johnson, it was the 4th highest scoring offense in the history of the league. So if there's any decline, part of the blame and a lot of the blame is going to go to John Morton. So he's got to step in and make sure that when his time is called to prepare a game plan, that he steps up and matches the talent that's on this roster. Because I think that Ben Johnson, while he was great, I think his last performance was not his best.
Been seeing reports, Doc. I've been seeing reports, and honestly, I don't like them because it's coming with ties to a player that I truly loved in Detroit, and somebody that they acquired at the free agency. Tim Patrick has been linked to the New York Jets. Aaron Glenn's been reportedly, again, this is reports, saying that he wants to bring Tim Patrick to start his rebuild in New York. I'm somebody that's like, hey, Tim Patrick is not going to cost a lot of money. Look what he did barely without any prep going into the season with the Detroit Lions. He pretty much stepped in, was on the practice squad for a week and a half, elevated, started playing, and produced. Obviously not huge numbers, but was a key player for this passing game. What's that situation? What do you think is going to happen with Tim Patrick in general, but when you see these reports linking to New York?
Yeah, it makes sense. I agree with the notion that Aaron Glenn would look at a player that his cornerbacks had to battle with day in and day out. And he probably sees a player that could come in and help out. And the fascinating question is going to be, I don't know if you guys heard that, sometimes you go through so many news reports. So if I'm misspeaking, please let me know. But I think I saw a message or a tweet that said that potentially the Jets could be putting together a package trying to move up to number 1 for Cam Ward. Now the veracity of that, I don't know. Yeah. I
seen that, Doc.
Yeah, I did. I think, again, you just go through so much information, but it would make sense that the first position that the Jets have to address is quarterback. And when the early pundits were saying Tyrod Taylor, I almost laughed out of my chair. I was like, if Aaron Glenn rolls with Tyrod Taylor in year 1, and I get it, you want a veteran presence, but here's what I would do. All right, if you're Aaron Glenn, free advice, I would make a play for Justin Fields. I think that's a guy that can run your offense and have some success, mobile, could handle the New York media, and could have some success while you also draft a quarterback. I don't go with a young rookie right away. But, if you want to make that blockbuster move and move up to number 1 for a quarterback, it's always a good start. It's a good, if your evaluation is to that point, the quarterback position is the biggest spot you got to worry about. But Tim Patrick is I think, a player the Lions will covet. And I think that he ends up being, in my prediction, in a lot of the videos we did, the last Lone Wolves podcast we did some predictions on what we thought. I think Tim Patrick returns. Jared Goff likes him. There's a good connection. I think he fits perfectly in the locker room, wants to prove. And also, too, guys, the connection that he's going to have with John Morton is probably going to be very fast, being that Patrick was with the Broncos as well as John Morton. So I do think that Morton will have a nice say in saying, hey, get Tim Patrick back. And I think that he can improve. I think that once you have a solid season where you prove that you can stay healthy and you rebound from some significant injuries and you play well, I think for his role, WR3, he's a perfect fit. But again, if in free agency, you guys all know, any team can come out there and say, hey, we're going to give you the extra term. We're going to give you the number 2 spot, and we're going to give you the targets, and you're the guy. That could be also very appealing. So I would not be surprised if a team came calling for his services, and especially the skill set that he's got that's most coveted. He's durable, and he's also sure-handed. So he survived last year, played well, and now you realize he's a receiver that can be very sure-handed. So he's going to be coveted.
I'm happy he survived, Doc.
Survived is, I mean, he's not wrong though. After back-to-back years with major injuries, yeah, he survived. Kind of just going into this offseason stuff too, as well, Doc. With the next week's the combine, obviously. Do you have any draft prospects that you've kind of have your eye on for the Lions? Even specific prospects or even like position groups for this first pick at 28 that you're looking for, whether it's in the combine or just in general.
Yeah, first and foremost, I think it's going to be, to me, I would be shocked if it was a position other than edge rusher or offensive lineman. I think that the trenches are a spot that the Lions have to address. And you look at the football team and you realize the success that the Lions have had has been predicated starting on offense with the trenches. And there are so many that are so intriguing. But I think the one that I respected Daniel Jeremiah and the work that he did. I think Ohio State offensive lineman Donovan Jackson is a name that's kind of starting to be mocked a little bit more to the Lions. I love the entire edge rusher class. If you can find any of them, then you are in a good position, whether it be a Shamar Stewart, whether it be a Mike Green. I think the position that I'm going to love on that Wednesday, hopefully that morning with the edge rushers, is to see and to kind of get a sense of what they bring to the table. But trenches, I just truly believe that where the Lions lacked in 2024 was the big question opposite of Aiden. And, you're going to need depth too. You could go defensive tackle as well as it's the deep class. You recognize that Ali McNeil is, likely to be available by, the start of the season, but you don't know what productivity you're going to have from him. So if you can pick up a defensive tackle as well, then you're going to have an opportunity to add depth as well, because the big question mark is going to be, is Broderick Martin, Mekhi Wingo, how's the depth going to be behind some of your top starters? So trenches, 28 trenches. But again, if you find a player, and we talked about it last week, I know I think I sent you guys into a tizzy saying move up to number 1. But what I'm saying is, if there's a player that you like that's there, 15 to 20, and you need to go get them, you make the deal. There's a chance. I would not also be surprised if there's an edge rusher they fall in love with and they feel like there's a chance, they'll go up between 15 and 20 and go get them.
And Doc, I got to ask you, because Jeff's not here, but him and I got in a pretty good debate, Booner as well. Who do you think is the biggest threat to the Detroit Lions in the NFC North? Me and Booner aligned with the Packers here, but Jeff loves himself some Caleb Williams, loves himself some Ben Johnson. He said he thinks that the Bears will be the number 2 seed in the NFC North because he thinks that they're ready right now. Who do you think is the biggest threat to the Lions this year?
Nope. I go with what my eyes saw. And when you win 14 games and your head coach does it with Sam Darnold and get yourself a coach of the year, it's the Vikings.
Really?
Yes. I think that first and foremost, There's no guarantee that Sam Darnold walks out that door. You saw the passion that the teammates had for him. There's no guarantee. Now, there's a chance, that they stick with J.J. McCarthy, but I like McCarthy and what he's able to do. And when you got Justin Jefferson, you got young receivers, you got talented players on defense that are aggressive, and you got Brian Flores, who is well-respected. I like, and starts with coaching. I like what Kevin O'Connell will do with what they have. Now, the Lions are still the class of the division. Still right now, no moves made by the Lions. They're still the best, followed by the Vikings. And then, in my opinion, it's the Bears. And the reason why you guys are accurate in your debate and assessment, and why Jeff is, thinking clearly with that topic as well, in that Ben Johnson knows the division inside and out. He's prepared for 2-3 years, 2 weeks, a year, prepping all the information, and there's talent there. And that's a situation in which the Bears, remember, guys, they went on the losing streak after taking a gut punch loss to the Commanders. That kind of spearheaded a losing streak. They started the year off winning, even with Matt Nagy. So I think the gap closes pretty fast, and Ben Johnson is going to have that team rolling. Now, they have a weakness. The offensive line needs to be retooled, and they've identified it, and they got to get it straightened out. Caleb Williams was on his ass quite a bit, but the hierarchy is the Lions, Vikings, Bears, and Packers.
Wow. Doc, kind of shocked. That's interesting.
You really think that Darnold returns to Minnesota?
I think there's a chance because, look, here's the thing. I understand that, these quarterbacks are next and things like that. But I think I heard that McCarthy had a second situation with the knee as well. So more work needed. And I understand. But when you have now, truly, Sam Darnold is the definition of a bridge quarterback. But you remember guys like Aaron Rodgers, guys like Jordan Love, they sat for multiple years. And I am of the opinion now, for those in the chat that say I'd never be a head coach, I think it's the wisest decision for head coaches to have a veteran, and you let that veteran teach the young quarterback 2-3 years how to win, how to prepare, how to handle tough losses. And I think it buys the Vikings a little bit of time, knowing that, hey, yeah, we got this guy, and it's all going to be predicated on what Darnold wants. If he wants north of $45 million, I would let him go. But if he's going to take 35, kind of take a Baker Mayfield deal, then you say, hey, look, we can let you be here 2-3 years and teach this young cat, and we'll give the team over in a couple years. And J.J. McCarthy, if you're J.J. McCarthy, it behooves you to sit, learn, understand the league, because you may only get one shot to be a quarterback, and you want to have your best opportunity. In my opinion, I think quarterbacks need 2, 3, 4 years to learn and grow and understand the game at the level that it needs to play well. Because you got Addison and Justin Jefferson Ferraris. You can't just hand it over to a guy first year and he's still now coming off of an injury and you struggle. It's a win now business, and I think they can win north of 10, 11 games with Darnold. But it's one of those deals where I understand the affordable cap nature of starting a young mobile quarterback. So I understand both sides of it. But if you're Kevin O'Connell, I don't understand the quick need to move on from a guy that just won you 14 games. And I know that there's a playoff ceiling and that the confidence to win it all would not be there. But you win a lot of games with you can win a lot of games with Sam Darnold. And if you surround him with maybe even some more talent and make it so that the ghosts disappear, you maybe could have some playoff success too.
Hey, just talking about quarterbacks there, we had the conversation a couple of days ago. It got brought up, Hendon Hooker, because I had mentioned going to sign Jameis Winston, and it set off a lot of alarms in people in Detroit. And I said, listen, Teddy Bridgewater, Doc, I think you talked about it months ago when Teddy got signed. We had the conversation on the show that it comes back and it's like, why isn't Hendon number 2 right now in the playoffs? And Teddy's the guy coming off the bench instead of Hendon Hooker. Do you think they're starting to put that question mark next to Hendon Hooker and say, and then they have to pursue a backup quarterback this offseason?
So here's the toughest part is that Hendon's got a tie to Brad Holmes. And I think Brad is overly loyal. And I think that both can be true. I think that in the 2024 playoffs, the Lions trusted that a backup like Teddy Bridgewater with more experience would be better suited. But moving forward with another offseason, with a chance to continue to grow, see more things develop, and have an opportunity, I do think that Hendon Hooker's the backup. I do think that the investment was there. Now, do I think he's as far along as the organization would like? No, clearly that he got moved down the depth chart. But I think with another offseason, working, learning, being part of the mix, I think that he'll be right up there. Now, look, I just think that he's not starter ready yet. I think that if a team calls and it wants to put him, like I would move him in a Myles Garrett trade in a heartbeat. But I don't think that the Lions are going to I think they might draft another quarterback to develop, but it would be in later rounds, day 2, day 3. But at this point in time, Hendon is the guy that the Lions have chosen to develop. And when you ask, I asked Dan, like, how happy are you with Hendon Hooker? And I asked directly, like, from a coaching perspective, knowing that he's a developmental guy, what's your assessment? Is he where he needs to be? And he's like, yeah, we like what he does. And in the end, if he's forced to go out there, he needs to just handle business. And so it's one of those deals where I think that while he develops, he's in a good spot. Now, if he's got to go out there and perform, I think that there may be some struggles and it may give the Lions quicker answers. But I think where the organization sits is that, hey, this is guys developing. And from the developmental level for a backup quarterback, he's getting to where he needs to be. And I think he has to be there this year, or otherwise his time in Detroit is going to be done. But if you need him to win a game, well, it's one of those situations where Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, St. Brown, it can make a lot of quarterbacks look good. But yeah, I wouldn't expect if something happens to Jared Goff, the Super Bowl dream ends.
Staying with the quarterback combo here, Doc, but kind of switching out of Detroit. And I just want to get your opinion on it because I think there's a lot of possible outcomes here. Matthew Stafford reportedly going to be shipped from LA. And I think that there's a realistic shot that it happens, that there's this much noise about it. And you see how trigger happy Les Snead is. Where do you think he lands? Is it possibly, we were just talking about the Vikings, maybe they make a JJ McCarthy, Matthew Stafford trade? I think that'd be really good for Minnesota. What do you think the whole situation is going to play out to be with Matthew Stafford?
Yeah, it's a situation where moving on from Cooper Kupp kind of caught Stafford off guard a little bit. And I just think that when you're that close to a receiver and your friends and the organization moves on from somebody that's really productive, but is now north of 30 and is taking up a lot of cap space, it's just a football decision. Same with Stafford. I think he may end up still with the Rams. This may also be a contract situation for him where he wants a little bit more of a reworked, more guaranteed money situation. But I'll ask you this. Now, this is not my opinion, but as a sports thinker, we have to do a little bit of a word salad here. Taking away the cap numbers and knowing it's impossible, but just player for player, this team, would you want Stafford back to lead it? Because you're driving around in the car and you've got to go extra slow. And of course, my thoughts go, I don't want Stafford here. He's a guy. But then you go, man, what if the final piece is Matthew Stafford, like a guy that has a bigger arm, that just has a little bit more of a need? Like, it also feels like kind of like a full circle moment. Like, man, the Lions did Stafford dirty, never gave him a run game, never gave him a realistic offensive line, never gave him a top 5 consistent defense. You had the 1 year, but what if Stafford was the final piece and he ends up not being there? So the thought pops in your head, and then I quickly go, well, Goff's the guy and the cap and all that kind of stuff, and Goff is the guy. But man, Stafford in Detroit but he's older, and I think that he's kind of peaked in terms of the ceiling. But would the hunger be there? I think that ship has sailed, but the thought did cross my mind, so I definitely wanted to say it. But I would think it would be crazy if the Giants offered a lot of picks to move up to get him. But I'm curious which teams would find his services interesting and needed. You know what pops in my head right now as I'm talking? Clearly, he's not coming to Detroit. I'm just saying that to just get that thought out of my head.
I like the thought that you had, though, Doc.
Right.
I agree with you.
What if, like that whole full circle, what if the final piece is Stafford? I think Stafford, just his kind of personality, just the way he looks, two teams I think would benefit would be the Colts or the Steelers. I think they're two quarterback teams in the AFC that potentially would be very intrigued by getting Stafford. But it's gonna be interesting to see what the Stafford saga how it plays out.
I see Jeff in the chat, and I have to throw out this question with Jeff in the chat because we had the massive argument the other day at the end of the show about this. But is Giovanni Manu's time? Is he going to do anything next year, or is this going to just be a hey, Brad kind of just went on a developmental stretch of picks here, and the Gio in the 4th round kind of just seems to not be it? Where are you at with that, Doc? Because we argued about this for 40 minutes on the show the other night.
Jeff got
Jeff had
he
crashed out. He had a little crash out.
Okay,
I have written Giovanni Manu off for context. That's why Jeff got so upset.
Jeff is he's what I wonder, has he already landed in Vegas with where his 2 minutes up? Was he paying by the minute? I mean, he's peeking into this when you're in Vegas. That's awesome. But I'll say this. Yeah, Giovanni Manu is raw, and I don't think he's ready for a starting role or a reserve role in 2025. I think he's still got to learn consistent. Listen, man, the complications of an offensive line are significant. It's long-term development. So the vote from me is that he's going to be a player that continues to grow, develop, maybe gets some situational moments if someone goes down. But I think another developmental year for Giovanni Manu. But look, they like his long-term potential, his size. Remember, he played in Canada. So he has to learn, NFL pass rush, run defense, consistency. And I do not think Giovanni Manu is going to outdo the veterans that are on the roster and draft picks. I think that he's coming from a far way back, and they like the true developmental nature of what he brings to the table. But man, he's got big size. So listen, I wouldn't be surprised, but from where he's at to beat out guys that are further along that played collegiately, I think that you have basically one spot open. I think Mahogany takes the right guard spot. Glasgow is going to be a position that maybe you fill with free agency or the draft. And so you got a lot of competition there with Awosika, Sorsdal, others as well that have opportunities. So
Sorsdal over Gio?
Yeah, at this point.
Listen, it's looking bleak.
Yeah, it's looking bleak. Manu was Sorsdal's got some experience, so it's comparative in regards to what they can do. But right now, I think that Sorsdal has the slight edge, but Manu can quickly catch up with a nice camp and development and stuff like that. But at this point in time, I think that he's the lowest on the in terms of getting an opportunity there. I'm sorry, guys. He was inactive all year. Hey. He was inactive all year.
This was we're out here. Yeah, we were out here looking for answers, Doc, and we come to you for them. You give us the answers.
Yeah, but when you have a good football team, the opportunity to develop a player is with that size frame. Just look for maybe 26 to be the breakout year. 25 is another competitive year with opportunities. But do you really want to put the offensive line and Jared Goff with an inexperienced player that hasn't had a whole heck of a lot of experience? Do you really want to do that to Jared Goff? My God, you thought the Jared Goff chance quickly dried up. Put Manu in there, and Jared Goff will be hitting the bench.
Something that I'm interested to see play out, Doc, because I think it's a matter of time. But we had the conversation last year going into the season, Jahmyr Gibbs or David Montgomery. Flipping it to the defensive side of the football now, Kelvin Shepard promoted to DC, obviously was a linebackers coach. Do you think that this is the year that we see Jack Campbell overtake Alex Anzalone as a LB1, and he'll really flourish with Kelvin Shepard as the DC now?
No, not at all. I think that Alex Anzalone is getting better. He's a solid leader. I think the roles are similar. You just hope that Derek Barnes stays healthy and chooses to stay here. And I think that consistency is what you continue to need to see from Jack Campbell in coverage, recognizing blitzes, and first and foremost, cease with the friendly fire. The biggest detriment to the Lions defense was Jack Campbell knocking down his own guys. He was flying around. And what was hilarious was I think Meek Robertson said that he almost took a hit from Jack Campbell in camp and almost put him down. He felt woozy, and then he did the unfortunate tackle on one of those situations where the friendly fire is taking out your own guys. So I'm of the opinion that Alex Anzalone needs a little bit more respect. I think that he's the green dot captain. I think that he's a player that continuously has shown that he's great in coverage. You saw the defense, how drastically different they played against the Vikings when he returned. But Campbell's a good player. He's developing, getting better day by day. Opportunities will be there, but to overtake, I don't think so. I think it's the same, especially with Calvin Shepard having known Alex Anzalone, what he brings to the table. I think that the linebackers unit is going to be primed for success. And I love the rotation. Once Malcolm Rodriguez and Derek Barnes come back healthy, and if they're back on the roster, the linebackers are set. They're pretty good.
Hey, people are going to hate that I switched the topic here, though, but I'd have to ask you. We asked you last week about the Tigers. How are we feeling? Spring training's been going on. We've seen a lot of videos the last few days. Are we feeling good, Doc? Or is it going up here, getting ready for the season?
Yeah, that's fun. It's good to talk about the Tigers, and it's very much a situation in which it's a baseball team that gets a lot of respect for getting to the postseason and has great pitching. I'm loving to see what Jackson Jobe and Skubal and what the top end of the rotation looks like. Here's the problem, okay? And we talked about it to start a little bit in regards to the Myles Garrett and the discussion about Bregman. I don't give the Tigers credit for losing out on Bregman. I think that people that are clapping going, oh, that, the 170 was there. The idea is to get the guy that you want. The basement of expectation is money should be available. So the Tigers are benefiting from lemming fans that are just like, oh yeah, congrats. You showed us that you were willing. Bottom line, you target a player, you get the player. So, you targeted Alex Bregman, you went out there and get it. So it leads me to question, was it just for PR or were they serious to try and get him? Yeah, the value would not have been there. But what I said on Doc and Jock tomorrow as a preview, you send a message to the whole fan base, overpay him. Why not? Look, clearly he's a guy that knows your manager, is an upgrade over what you got. You overpay him and you send the message that, hey, okay, this is the guy that gets the benefit of a contract because we need to send a message that we're serious about advancing. And that's where I think that, Scott Harris, and I also understand that point of view. You have a number you're willing to give and you don't want to overdo it, but there's no cap. So I don't care that I don't give them credit. I look at it from the perspective of I still need a right-handed bat. Where's that coming from? And I would say to the beat writers, please stop highlighting features on Javier Baez, his car, what he does in batting practice. I don't give a shit. Only news I want to hear about Javier Baez is when he gets cut because he's a detriment. I don't care who he works with. He's going to be a 200 hitter with a low on-base percentage, and he's going to stink. And if he's on this roster, it makes the baseball team worse because in batting practice, you don't throw outside curves or sliders. So it looks great. He's great. He's in the best shape of his life, all that nonsense that they put out in spring training. I don't want to see reports about Javier Baez. The rest of the team, I'm invested in learning about Carpenter, the young players, all the players that, what's the transition going to look like for, Spencer Torkelson as maybe he takes a lesser role. Does he get back to be that right-handed bat? I'm looking at it from the perspective of young players developing and putting together a season that helps out and build upon what you did. But I felt like if you wanted to take a stride forward, I think your plan to go after one guy and a bunch of old pitchers it's a B- off season. And it's weird that the first report that comes out is Cobb is his hip did not respond well to training and he's out for a month. It's not going to start the year. I'm like, all right, yeah, you nearly dragged the guy.
Tough.
Yeah, you dragged the guy off the couch and he's sitting there probably wanting to retire. And he's like, you offer me how much? All right, let's give it a go. And he started doing his motions in the rotation and his hips lied to him. And once he started getting into motion, they were like, oh, hell no. And so I look at it like the aggression should have been a little bit higher from Scott Harris. But good. The money's there. Congrats. That's the basement. That's the lowest expectation that I have. But I expect them to win over 85 games. Should be a playoff team, but no chance to beat the Yankees. No chance to compete if you ever get that far against the big spenders. It's not, yes, you have to spend, but you also have to spend wisely. I would trust at this point. My thinking is if you give Scott Harris money, I'm comfortable with the guys he's going to evaluate to bring in here. The numbers are there. The analytics are there. The pitching staff is there. But you built up the fan base to watch Bregman, and it flopped. So it's disappointing. But, okay, let's see. The next question is, who's the right-handed bat that's going to help out this lineup?
Hey, just want to follow up with this then. Have you seen the Vladdy stuff, the Vladimir Guerrero, the trade, all of that?
Yeah, I love
I've
it.
been around for the last 24 hours. Are you like, hey, let's get that done? Like sign that, get that trade done, get him an extension to get that thing done?
Get that thing done. Yeah, absolutely. Player acquisition is great. Be aggressive. That's my theme of tomorrow's podcast. I think the general managers are great with draft and develop, but they're weak at free agent aggression and getting guys that are established to take the next step. Start paying. Yeah, go ahead. I love it. I love the idea. You should be one of those situations. You should be a team that is in the mix to talk to a guy that I think would benefit from coming to Detroit. I think he'd fit in pretty well and acclimate, and you could watch him for the next decade.
And Doc, kind of staying with the Tigers here, when you look at the third base spot now, who do you think really steps up and takes that? Because obviously you have Matt Verling there, but they can go out and acquire one in free agency like you're saying. But where do you think that ends up playing out? Because that's still kind of a question mark heading into the season for the Tigers.
Yeah, that's why Bregman was going to be great. I thought that he would be somebody that would come in. Yeah, I love the replacements, right? Verling. But, the numbers are comparable. That's the weird part that, yeah, Bregman's an upgrade, but Verling came on. So it's going to be interesting to see how they handle third base and how that plays out. I do think that there are, question marks about that infield in terms of their defensive prowess. They did, it was pointed out to me that they did drop their number of errors last year, but, the way in which it shakes out currently with, your young players switching positions and stuff like that. So it'll be interesting to see because the strength of this team is going to be fundamentals, I think, hitting, but the third base spot is very, very much a nice competitive spot that you would think someone would take, but I think maybe the leader right now is Verling. But, that's the wild part too, is that he up and down, he was kind of that traditional 4A player, but when he got going and he had opportunities to make some contact, I thought he acclimated well and gave himself a chance to have a conversation to be part of this team for the future. So we'll see. But number one thing is, hey, defensive infield has to make sure that they continue their success and figure out how to make sure that offense stays purring to help out the pitching staff that should perform very well this year.
Hey, do you think, Doc, is switching another team here, Red Wings? Do you think they make a push here in the second half for a playoff push here and end up making the playoffs? It seems pretty good. They're in a great spot right now, it feels like.
Man, I was completely wrong about the Four Nations Cup last week. Adam and I were talking. Doc. Completely wrong. I was like, who cares? It's just a break. I want to see more Red Wings. And once the gloves went down and the Tkachuk brothers threw down against Canada, I was thrilled watching the USA and Canada over the weekend, and I'm going to be thrilled tomorrow to watch it. I'll be one of the probably 10 million people that hopes for another great contest. It's beautiful. They literally dwarfed the NBA by having a competition that all they did was have people care. The players cared. It was competitive. It was nice. There was a story. There was a sports intrigue. It was competitive, and there was a rivalry. USA and Canada hockey rivalry is up there amongst the best in sports. So absolutely love it. Love the idea of the, Olympics and these players participating. Four Nations, wildly successful. And now when the Red Wings come back, you hope. And did you guys see the wild columnist what he put out there today? That was slick. If you're that columnist at the Free Press and you're looking to stir a bunch of people's emotions, talking about trading Dylan Larkin, that gets everybody's attention. And I understand the premise and I understand the debate that you could have, But in the end, Dylan Larkin is a Red Wing, and the Red Wings are going to continue to build around him. I think that they play well. The question mark you got to find out is who's your goalie? Who's your goalie that's going to get hot at the right time? I think the veteran Cam is going to be somebody that's there, that can be somebody that's very familiar with the coaching staff. But goaltending is always a question mark. But I love the renewed energy that this hockey club has shown. Like, they play freer, pucks going into the net, everything that we talked about as a hockey fan. If you love hockey, fundamentals got better, puck possession got better. They played freer. Larkin looks happy. DeBrincat, Kane, there's a lot of good players, role players that stepped it up. So I'm of the opinion that you continue to ride it out. And then what makes it fun is the trade deadline might be a situation in which you get your star some more help. And number one thing is trust in Lucas Raymond, and he's going to be a star in the future. And you keep Dylan Larkin, and don't talk about trading the captain.
Yeah, that would be devastating. When you look at this team, though, Doc, staying with the Wings, obviously you can say, oh, well, obviously they're winning games. What is the difference, the biggest difference that you think is kind of flying under the radar with this transition that they're going through from being this team that was supposed to be something and then just falling flat on their face and now making an absolute run that can be the number one wild card seed here coming up?
Yeah, when you look at the club, okay, first and foremost, special teams picked up. They just looked bogged down on the power play. They were struggling, and it felt like there was when you saw Derek Lalonde's squad, it felt like maybe they were too much in their head. The skating, the puck possession wasn't there. It felt like when you went into a game and there were far too many nights when the effort wasn't there. Okay, let's start with that. There were too many nights where you go up against Montreal, a team that you're probably competitive with and much better than, and you get dominated, time of possession and puck holding, the not getting the puck out of your zone. That was terrible. And so I think that what the attitude that McClellan comes in with is when he said play effing hockey, which is, hey, simple, connect with your passes, blue line to blue line, skate well, skate with effort, forecheck, finish your check. Basics started to pick up, and then you started to see the stars actually kind of have some fun again. You saw the DeBrincats and the Canes put the puck in the net. You saw the energy level pick up. You saw the okay, if you lose a game, it's not because of lack of effort. It's not because of simple mistakes in terms of where you need to be on the ice and special teams. You saw the neutral zone be a lot cleaner. So I would say the neutral zone play, moving through the middle of the ice, much better in regards to before. It would just be, haphazard and the puck would be dispossessed pretty fast. Now you're putting the puck in the right hands to move the puck from the defensive zone into the offensive zone in a much smoother way. Special teams are better. And I think that when everything's better and it clicks with a hockey club, you just start to see the momentum rolling where shift to shift, it builds upon the lineups that are there. And you're starting to see Lucas Raymond and Dylan Larkin and your guys that you count on playing at a much better clip. And I think that that's a good sign for this club moving forward. And I do think you're absolutely right for your opinion that this could be a squad that gets to the postseason and maybe even wins a series.
Doc, I'll ask this question. Someone ETN in the chat said, question for Doc: how much MVP consideration does Cade Cunningham deserve in your opinion?
Yeah, look, credit to Cade. He took a lot of heat from a lot of people, and I think the beat writers were fair and accurate, and they said, just give Cade some shooters, and he can show you what he can do, distribute. He can be a leader. He just needs time to develop, needs a coach to be with the club and make this basketball team better. Now, you get him to the All-Star game, and that format was ass. It was terrible. I thought that if it was a real game, he would have played
so
10,
bad.
15 minutes. It was an awful, awful thing to see how that went down. You didn't get to see Cade all that much in the All-Star game, but no, unfortunately, he doesn't get MVP consideration. He's a great player, but he's the best player on the Pistons. And congrats to Trajan Langdon for surrounding him with players that, hey, what do you know? Simple basketball. Hey, the object of the exercise is to shoot the basketball and execute. And Tobias Harris and Malik Beasley and Hardaway Jr., what do you know? Vets that can shoot. And that just makes things a lot easier for A lot easier for the Pistons to win games. Defensiveness, the defensive prowess that they have, they're much more entertaining to watch. Hey, their coach has a little bit of spirit in his, and I love the fact that after a win, he still said, hey, we didn't play up to Piston standard. Hey, we need to make sure that we play, even if we get a W, we need to play up to standard. They're watchable. And double the win total from last year, that's a win in and of itself. JB Bickerstaff was the perfect hire for the Pistons. And credit to Cade for shutting up people like me who opened the door of discussion about his worthiness of being the number one pick and what he can do. He can do it all. And It's great to see, hey, give the guy some time. He can develop. He can be a great player. And let's go. Let's see. Let's continue to build in the draft and add talent year by year to give this guy a chance to compete, because he's got it all. Now, the next step for him, just brand wise, to be a little bit more, entertaining in his discussions. He's a little bit monotone and, guarded. But once his personality shines with people he trusts, I think you got a superstar in Detroit, but a little bland on the interview side when he talks.
It's crazy. We're about to have in this last calendar year, like the 24-25, 4 teams potentially, all 4 Detroit sports teams in the playoffs. That's nuts. I don't think that's ever happened before.
Yeah, it's good. I think that the general managers are doing a great job of understanding everything that is needed that Detroit fans like. Gritty guys that want to be here, and understanding that to build teams that are able to win, you need to have talent, you need to have grit, ability to withstand the noise, and clearly, when you struggle, you have opportunities to draft a little bit higher. And so far, a lot of the picks have been worthy of, starting at a good spot. I just think the next level for all these guys is to just the final pieces of the puzzle in free agency and rounding out rosters will determine who goes the farthest. And it's a great time, man. Detroit sports is back, and it's a great time to be talking about it, to be following all the teams. It's fun, man. It's fun to peek at everything going on in Detroit sports. There's more buzz. I think there's so many more people following and talking about all the sports. All the podcasts in town are great, and it's a great time for Detroit sports right now, and it's going to be a good 2025, I believe.
Hey, are we going to see you down at the Combine? What days did you say you're down there this next week?
Yep, I'm getting there Monday. The big work is Tuesday. I'm sticking around probably till Wednesday afternoon, having meetings with the crew, with SI, catching up and meeting people for the first time. But I think the schedule goes Wednesday morning is when the defensive linemen are going to talk. So I'm just going to stick around for the media portion of it. I'm not sticking around for the numbers and all that stuff. That stuff is all televised, and it's not exactly my cup of tea, but I will follow it from afar. But I'll be in Indy from Monday till Wednesday, and it'll be a fun time. My first time there. I'm looking forward to it. So we'll figure out if we talk next Wednesday or Thursday, but it'll be a fun time, and I'm looking forward to hearing what Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes have to say. And the fun part too is the opportunity potentially is there to talk to the coordinators and to maybe walk up to Ben Johnson and be like, so, there's some people that think you didn't bring your best effort. What do you think about that? In some kind of formal way, I got to formulate that question. Or I think the question, really the best way to formulate it is, how does it feel, not meeting your goals with the Lions, and how did you process that? I think that if you hear that question, it's going to come from me, because I do think that it'll be interesting to see the number of media that's going to swarm Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn. Yeah. I want to see them in that environment, but I want to ask them about the Lions. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. So it'll be fun to see.
It was interesting. I don't know if anyone caught it in the Kelvin Shepard interview. I'm sure you did, Doc, but Kelvin had mentioned at points throughout the season, everyone had an idea what was going on, and how he had agents and people reached out to him because they thought he was going to be the next DC. But the one comment that stood out to me was him basically being like, during the season, not even the playoffs, but during the season, some of these guys trying to juggle around, thinking about their next step and also the responsibility at hand. And he said that, and right away, it just kind of makes me in my head like, I wish that coaches didn't have to I know that's part of the game, and it is with every franchise every year. So I don't want to single out they should be, but it is a little as a fan or someone who covers a team, you sit there and you cringe up a little, like, oh, just focus on the game. Who cares about that? Other stuff? But it's part of it. But it
Boone,
sucks.
it's millions of dollars. And remember, too,
For sure.
millions of dollars.
Yeah.
And remember, okay, it's while everybody knew, it's one of those situations the main guy knew too. Dan Campbell wants this. It's what's the highest level of respect that you really can show Dan Campbell is 2 of his coordinators get jobs. That is literally, like, outside of the competitiveness, you're now seeing the Spartans take the Lions guys. You're starting to see the Lions flourish because it's successful. So it's overblown, the idea of passion for your job. They wanted to win. Okay. But again, the biggest reason, and of course, it's always great to talk about, oh, did Ben Johnson screw the Lions? Guys, come on. Ben Johnson wanted to leave on a winning note. They're competitors. He's bummed out. But at the same token, when you have a $15 million cushion or $13 million cushion waiting for you, it makes things a lot easier to smile. You know what I mean? And guys, come on. These are genius level thinkers and planners. And when you have 20 guys on IR, do you really believe the Detroit Lions at the highest level, you give Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes 1942 whiskey, tequila, and get them hammered? And you go, hey, guys, did you think you're going to win the Super Bowl this year? They'd be like, fuck no, we're not winning the Super Bowl. We don't got Aiden. We don't. And then on the very second defensive play, you lose your best cornerback. That's a veteran that's coming off an all-world game. The universe was telling everybody this football team was not winning a Super Bowl. So it's just, you just knew it. I mean, you just can't have 20 guys get hurt. It doesn't work that way. And did you see the thing that bothered me the most about the Super Bowl parade? I love watching the Eagles. I love how they were built. I love learning about Howie Roseman. I love learning about Nick Sirianni. But what pissed me off the most was that effing sign that said 21 of 22 guys that started the year ended up playing in the Super Bowl. How the F lucky do you get to have that happen? Juxtaposed with the Lions, who had everybody get hurt on defense when you needed them. The injury to Lee McNeil was devastating, but they regroup. If you get lucky, you have a chance to stand toe-to-toe with some of those teams in the NFC, and you put yourself in the mix. But to get over that hump, you got to be a little bit more aggressive in free agency. And no more Manus, no more Martins. You got your guys. You got your developmental guys in your program. All the draft picks this year, all of them have to compete to start, because now you know that, hey, right now, Brett Holmes is great at what he does, but he's not a well-rounded GM in regards to acquiring and maneuvering in free agency. So he'll improve that. He'll get to that point. He'll maneuver it. But right now, Howie Roseman's the best general manager in the National Football League, and you can learn a lot of things from how he selectively, aggressively added talent when there was a deficiency. It's one thing to get to the Super Bowl and lose, but then to quickly turn it around and get back there and win it, that's kudos to you. And I think the Lions can learn a lot from what they do. And I do think sustained success is great, but it's time you deliver for these fans a Super Bowl. And I think you got 25 and 26 before it gets to be real challenging.
Hey, Doc, love it. Love it.
Hey,
Doc.
Appreciate you, Doc, always hopping on. I can't wait until the combine next week. I honestly haven't stopped thinking about it all week long. It just keeps, and you get to go the first few days. It's actually good. It's like, and I know we're not coworkers. We all have our separate things, but hey, you're down there covering the first week. The boys will be down there. Hopefully, I know you might have some people, Christian, I think you said, or someone might be down there the second half, but we'll be down there covering everything.
Absolutely. And I'll be messaging you, blowing up your phone. We'll figure it all out. Guys, you think Jeff survives? You think Jeff gets in any compromised photos, gets in any situation? Did he go out with the missus? Does he got protections on him? You got to make sure.
Doc's reaching. No, hey, I think Jeff has a good head on his shoulders, Doc. I think he knows. That's
when you go to Vegas, that's not the time to go with a good head on your shoulders. That's the time you go 200 on red. Let's go gamble it up. Have a good time. Spearmint Rhino. You go 24 hours.
I mean,
you get your massages, you do your thing.
On, Doc. We haven't had football to
Sports
bet
betting,
on. So when it comes
absolutely.
to the Nino, he might be, yeah. Jeff, I bet will be going at the Nino for sure. For sure.
Okay. I don't know. Feels like we might have to message him and make sure that he hits the 5-hour energy, and make sure you realize that, hey, that's a town you don't need to sleep in. Hey, the parties begin after midnight. It's a good time, and it makes sure that he enjoys everything about Las Vegas, man. It's the best town to be in, and I can't wait to get back out there one day when I finally slow down from working. Man, today was a crazy wild news day, and thank you guys for having me. It was crazy wild news day. This hour flew by. You guys crushed it, held it down. But hopefully Jeff doesn't come back married. Don't do it. Don't do it, Jeff. I know she's putting the pressure on you. Don't do it. You do it on your time. I know they put the pressure on you. On your time, Jeff. When you're ready, that's when you give her the ring.
Hey, come on, Doc. Preaching now, Doc.
Hey, I think there might be. I'm not saying anything. There might be an eloping going on. I can't confirm nor deny that.
What?
An eloping? Where you just go get? Isn't that where you just go get married?
He might get engaged. Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. He's too young. Don't do it. No engagement for Jeff.
I think that's the word, right, Doc?
No, elope means he gets married out there in Vegas. He could get engaged. He could get on one knee and be like, "I love you forever. Will you be mine forever?"
I love you, Doc. Hey, we appreciate you. Appreciate you tuning in, Doc. Hey, we'll talk to you next Wednesday. Maybe Thursday, depending on your travel situation for the people. Oh, he's gone.
All right.
Hey, by the way, interview is brought to you by BetUS.
Hey, what's going on there? It's Jeff Iafrate. Appreciate you for finishing the video. You can check out one of the videos here suggested, or show support by commenting, liking, and subscribing. And buy your merchandise, officialctsports.com.